you for tuning in again tonight. We have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I'm excited that we're going to talk about DWI law tonight. And I have with me one of the best DWI lawyers in Houston, probably in Texas, Mark Theissen. He's going to explain the DWI law to you like you've never had it explained before. And there's a new Supreme Court case that's out, and I haven't had an opportunity to read it, and he's going to explain it to us and explain it to us into how it affects us right now, dealing with being stopped for a DWI. So I'm running a little fast tonight. I'm a little stressed because I'm in trial, my fans. And so if my face is not made up like it normally is, I added extra lipstick. So anyway, let's get right into it. Mark, thank you for joining us. And tell us a little bit about yourself before you tell us about DWIs.
Well, thanks for having me, Vivian. I'm Mark Theissen. I am a local homegrown Houston boy. And I try mostly about 90, well, trials, probably about 100% of them are DWI, or 95% of them are DWI, and my practice focus is probably about 85% on DWI. I'm one of the few attorneys, I think in the past 6 years, only 6 attorneys have won a blood test. 6 or 7 attorneys have won a blood test. I'm one of the few attorneys that's won a blood test where the blood comes in and a jury actually denies it and says, we don't believe the blood test, we're going to find your client not guilty. And I've actually done it twice in the past 6 months. So blood testing is the new way of the future. It's pretty scientific.
I think make sure that you get your pens and paper handy so that you can call us and ask us any questions. We're not going to answer questions about specific cases because you have a lawyer for that. Hypothetically, and just to understand the law in general, okay? So, and one of the reasons why I wanted Mark on is because he wins more than any other DWI lawyers I see. So I'm very proud of him, and he loves sharing his knowledge. So go ahead and just tell us what we need to know.
All right, well, there's a new case that came out. The Supreme Court just decided it April 17th. So the Supreme Court of the United States, this affects the entire United States, not just Texas residents, everybody. It's called McNeely versus Missouri. And basically what the Supreme Court said is that you guys have made it so easy, and by you guys I mean the DAs, the sheriff's office, the jails have made it so easy and so streamlined that you can go get a warrant. There should never be a reason that you don't need a warrant. Because in Texas right now, there are a few reasons why you don't need a warrant. Say somebody dies and there's a death, an accident, somebody dies, or there's serious bodily injury, or there's a child under 15, or this is your 3rd DWI and you're a felon, or you've previously been convicted of an intox assault. They don't need to go get a warrant. They just say, the police say, hey, we don't need to go get a warrant. We're going to go get your blood immediately. And the Supreme Court said, no. That's when you should really have your ducks in a row. In those real serious cases, you should get your troops rounded up even that much faster, you know, and then you should really go get a warrant. So there's no reason to sidestep a warrant requirement and infringe on people's rights and constitutional privileges to circumvent the warrant requirement. So I think this is really important, and what's going to happen are probably twofold, right? All of your cases right now that don't have a warrant, where, well, you can't have consented, but the police just went and got your blood without a warrant, whether they didn't feel like it or whether you fell in that mandatory blood draw, those blood draws are now unconstitutional. Wow. And so it's not like a constitutional error doesn't go back, well, it only started April 17th. No, it was unconstitutional. Our state statute allowing that is unconstitutional. So all of you, if they didn't get a warrant, make sure you're telling your lawyer, hey, I got a McNeely issue. McNeely versus Missouri, my blood is gone. And so now the DAs are analyzing the case without the blood. So this has triggered 2 things. All my felony clients right now are getting hella deals, right?
Wow.
And but now the police, the DAs in Montgomery and Harris and all surrounding counties are meeting to go, you know what, we're just doing blood draws on everything. We're just going to get we're going to make it so much faster and blood draw and everything. Or I guess some DAs are going to try and fight it and say, no, it's not really that easy of a process, and we have hardship, and you're going to have these motions hearings where they're going to try and get in the blood. And honestly, the only way the blood's coming in is if you have like a state-friendly judge that's going to say, I don't care if it's unconstitutional, you know, I believe that it was too much of a hardship, and you didn't have to get a warrant.
Wow. So explain to the audience when a person gets a felony DWI.
Felony DWI can happen in a variety of ways. It can either be your third conviction. It's not just arrests, right? You have to have 2 prior convictions to have the jurisdictional enhancement up to a felony, because a felony is your third, but say I got arrested back in like 97, it got dismissed. Arrested in 98, gets dismissed. Then I get one in 2002 and it sticks. And then I get another, I get convicted. Then I get arrested in 2013. That's not my 4th DWI, that's only technically my 2nd, right?
Right.
So a 3rd DWI after 2 convictions is a felony DWI, or if you have a child under the age of 15, if you had an accident, somebody suffered serious bodily injury or an intox manslaughter. I'm trying to think if I left out anything. You got me on the spot.
That's the majority of them.
Yeah.
That's good enough. But let me ask you this now. You said you're one of the few lawyers who's won a couple of blood draw cases. Tell me, just in general, what those circumstances are. How does one find themselves in a position like in the cases you won? Let's talk about it a little bit.
All right, the cases that I won, the first one that I won was probably the highest that I've heard, was a .228 DWI blood draw, and it was on a misdemeanor. And the lady was, I won't say her name, but the lady was a Venezuelan national or South American national, and she was applying for citizenship. And so this DWI, because she was an illegal immigrant, she didn't have a valid license. And so when you have a DWI with an invalid license, that is a crime of moral turpitude. That could get her deported essentially under immigration laws, or actually prohibit her from re-entry. So she had everything to risk. You know, we couldn't get her any programs at that point because she had this invalid license. And so there are these programs, divert, which is like pretrial diversion or deferred adjudication, but they said no, if you have an invalid license, you're not available, or you're not eligible to get in these programs. So there were no options. It was either trial or nothing, and her life's over. So we had to try it. And that,
what were the facts in that case? I mean, why did they stop her?
She was driving home from eating pizza at what's that? The wine bar, the tasting room, right there. Tasting room, shout outs next time I'm the tasting room. The tasting room. She was
that Upper Kirby?
That's the one. It was the one in the Galleria area.
Yeah.
And so she was coming back from the tasting room. She's on 610, and I guess some guy had pulled over on the freeway, and he was pulling a big barbecue trailer that left it part in the freeway, and she smacked into it in the middle of the night, had this huge accident on 610. And they take her off to that, that gas station right there off by Memorial Park by Westcott, and they do the standard field sobriety test. And she's bawling, crying, and she looks fine on video, you know? And they came back, and we went through trial, and they said, oh, yeah, at the time of stop, she should have been like a .26, .28, which she should have looked wasted, and she just didn't.
Even though she's crying, she doesn't look intoxicated?
I mean, I almost cry when I get pulled over for speeding. I mean, people cry and get nervous all the time, you know?
Right.
But no, she did not look over 3.5 times the legal limit, you know? And so there was what's called a disconnect. What I know and believe with my own eyes and ears, and I know what to be 3 times the legal limit, just isn't matching up with the science, you know? So you have a disconnect where either your body's defying the laws of science or the machine's wrong. And so I hired Amanda Culbertson, fantastic expert. Amanda Culbertson analyzed all the paperwork and found that they had cracked a vial in the analysis of the run, and their expert said no, that won't affect it, and we had a difference of opinion. But honestly, I couldn't have done it without the judge in that case.
Wow.
And I'll leave the judge's name out of it. The judge was so mean to me and so rude to me that finally in my closing, I went up and I had my closing all written out, you know, and I knew exactly what I was going to say. I scratched and I had to put it down, and I just went to the jury and I was like, help me. Please help me. I'm playing a game where the referee's wearing the other team's jersey. Help me.
Really? You said that?
Yeah, and that judge was like, is that a jab at me, Mr. Theissen? I was like, no, sir. Please help me. Like, I had nothing, you know. I was like, So I had nothing, and jury came back not guilty as the highest blood that I've heard of, and judge stormed off the bench, and to this day, thank you, Judge, couldn't have done it without you.
Now, was that a visiting judge or an elected official? I'm not asking for the name.
That was a visiting judge. He was elected, but he was visiting.
Wow, wow. Isn't that awful when the judge who's being paid to referee becomes emotionally involved? And a lot of times it helps us. You know, if they're so unreasonably mean to you, that sometimes the juries feel sorry for you, I think.
Yeah, I've had that happen a couple times in Brazoria and Harris and municipal, and not municipal, in like different misdemeanor courts, where the jury just feels bad. You're trying to get your client's story out, and you're fighting everybody in there, that the jury actually gives you a little credit and thinks you should have done better, and will protect your client and wrap them up, you know, and that's what a lot of Jerry Spence talks about.
And isn't that what the Constitution asks for? The Constitution comes in to block the government from your client and to give you these protections, and now the judges don't want to give you the protections that the Constitution allows and that they're supposed to be enforcing. And it seems like then the citizens do. So that's the beauty of the system sometimes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the trials that I've won are losers. My clients are poor. They can't afford experts. But in the end, the judges are so mean to me for trying to fight for my client that in the end, I think it tips in our favor.
Absolutely.
I think we have a call. Hold on just a minute. Caller, you're on. Hello?
Yes.
Thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I got a question about the non-refusal weekends.
Okay.
Okay, what do you want to know about non-refusal weekends?
They say I can't really, and police say that I can't refuse the blood draw, and I'm like, how can you not refuse? You can refuse anything you want. And they tell me the other day, you can't refuse on the no-refusal weekend. I just don't understand it.
So what do you say about that, Mark?
All right. Legally, you can't refuse because the Supreme Court of Texas has taken, it's a benefit analysis, cost-benefit. They're saying, all right, the cost of invading your privacy and violating your arm and sticking you with a needle is outweighed by the benefit of deterring DWI. We're going to scare everybody into, if you get pulled over, we're going to stick a needle in your arm. And that benefit outweighs the cost of our private interests, you know. But I think what will happen is it's going to take a case where the police officers, and this is where it's or somebody, whoever's drawing that blood and the client's fighting, that needle's going to break off, and it's going to go in their blood, and it's going to go in the heart, and they're going to die. And then, unfortunately, it's going to take the right lawyer, the right case, and probably a seriously injured or dead client to go take it to the Supreme Court and say the cost of one human life is not worth the benefit of all this.
Right, right. And, you know, a lot of the laws that we have related to DWIs are DPS rules attached to the privilege of having a driver's license. So if you have a driver's license, you're supposed to, the privilege of having it, you don't have to do it, you don't have to, but I guess the blood draws are mandatory though. That's different from you're different from the blowing though.
You know, that brings us to an interesting point, Vivian. You know, ever since I was in law school, I think in college, everybody said, don't take the breath test, don't take the breath. Everybody just says
that's the way it used to be.
Everybody says, don't take the breath test because nothing would happen. You wouldn't get a blood test or anything. But now, it used to be no refusal weekends, like Friday and Saturday night. You refuse the breath test, they're going to take blood. And I'll tell you, it's way harder to beat blood than it is breath. I mean, blood testing is a science. It's got its own problems, but the breath test is a hunk of junk. And any lawyer will, if you look at their statistics, has won a lot more breath tests than blood tests. And so now what they're doing with this McNeely case is they're just going to get warrants on everybody. So when they say, do you want to take a breath test? I actually say, yeah, take the breath test, because if you don't, they're going to go get a warrant and they're going to draw your blood, and I can beat breath a lot easier than I can beat blood. I mean, I can beat blood, but breath is just a hunk of junk. But
does that answer your question, caller?
Yeah, so I think that doesn't sound about right, but it's all kind of fuzzy to me, because me and my two boys, Cletus and Buford, we got pulled over. That dang police officer just going on about how you can't refuse. You can't refuse. I even tried to do the damn walking test on my passenger, and I just don't understand it. But I sure do appreciate your time, Mr. Theissen.
Thank you. It's Theissen. Okay. All righty, that's funny. Well, I know a long time ago, when I first became a prosecutor in '92, we would tell people, well, not as a prosecutor, but when I became a defense lawyer in '95, we would tell people I wouldn't blow. I just wouldn't blow because you don't have to. There was no punishment. And then it escalated along to where then there was a punishment. You'd lose your driver's license for not blowing. Because I think when I first started, you'd only lose your driver's license if you blew over the legal limit, which was .10. In '92. It was .10. So if it was over it, you'd lose it. It was no penalty for not blowing. And then, you know, the legal limit got lowered to .08, and then you got punished either way.
Right.
You know, you got punished if you didn't do it, you got punished if you did and it was over the legal limit. So what about people who blow .07?
Man, I'll tell you, like, they come in and they always say, hey, what if my blood comes under? What if I blow a .07? I've got a case in Montgomery County right now. The guy gets pulled up, big dude, coming back from an A&M game. He's like 6'3", 280 pounds, big heavy set fella. Of course he can't do the walk and turn in the one leg stand. Goes down, gives him a breath test, releases him at a .07 because he blows a .07, but he also submits a urine test. A year later they test the urine and there's marijuana metabolites in the urine. And so they go, well, you might have been a .07, but we think you're on weed and alcohol. We're going to charge you with DWI. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Urine is the trash can of the body. Who's to say he smoked weed at that A&M game? Who's to say he didn't smoke weed the night before,
right,
or 4 nights before? But the DAs, I've seen them try to make that case with a .07. But I think if you have a good DWI trial attorney, they won't be able to make that case. You want me to tell them a little bit about retrograde?
Hold on just a moment.
Okay.
Let's take a call. Caller, do you have a call for Mark Theissen? I'm sorry. I'm tired. I'm in a rape trace. I'm in a rape trial right now, so I'm fighting for a man's life, so please forgive me, because I definitely know who Mark is.
Okay. How you doing, Miss King?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, Mr. Theissen?
Good, thank you.
I wish I had known you back in 1987. No, 97. I experienced a DWI, and I wound up being convicted of it. And I refused to blow. And, you know, as Vivian King know, I'm a truck driver. And they suspended my license, I think, for like 6 months.
Wow.
Because I refused to blow. But I went on and did I guess, the field sobriety test, and they recorded it. And I even have a copy of the tape. And I wasn't drunk. But the lawyer that I used, he told me to go ahead and plead guilty anyway. I went and plead guilty, but I wish I had took the trial because it kind of devastated me. You know, it took
6 months of your income.
Yeah, it ruined my life for a short period of time. I was able to bounce back, but you know, once you get DWI on your record, and you're a truck driver, sometimes they won't hire you. So many years had to pass by. So I had to, start doing something else, do another profession,
And I know that's what you do. Tracy's my biggest fan.
Okay.
So he's met me by watching, and he's my biggest fan. He's the one that does my Facebook page. He's the one that I told you were going to be on tonight. So did you put it on Facebook, Tracy?
Yeah, it's on there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, now you know, if you have a DWI, you definitely need a specialized lawyer. I've tried about 15 as a prosecutor, but only 1 as a defense lawyer, and I did win it. But if I have a serious one, I recommend to people to go to someone like Mark.
I don't drink and drive no more. I learned my lesson after the first time, but I've been drinking, but I wasn't. I don't think I was legally drunk, but I was just advised. I heard so much they said don't blow.
You don't blow.
I decided to blow, but they took my license.
But what you didn't know is when they told you not to blow, you don't blow, and you hire a lawyer and you go to trial. That's the other part that you didn't know about. You don't not blow and think they're going to dismiss it, because prosecutors don't dismiss DWIs because the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers lobby is just too strong. The laws change every year.
I hired a free will lawyer. I hired a free will lawyer. He didn't want to take the trial. I didn't care how much money it cost.
Yeah, but Tracy, what have you learned from me by watching this show every week? What have you learned? You have to hire the right lawyer.
If you're not guilty, take the trial. But it was 1997.
Right.
It was 1997. I was a truck driver. Had a job driving truck at the time.
Well, you're driving trucks now, but one of the other things I hope I've taught the people that watch is that you hire the right lawyer, too. It's not just a free world lawyer. You hire the right lawyer. Some lawyers are better at certain things than others.
Well, I'm more educated now than I was then.
All right. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. You know, that's a good point that you make, Vivian, is like, Tracy, you got a DWI, that's like a brain tumor. You need to go to a brain surgeon. You wouldn't go to a general practitioner. You'd be like, look, my life's on the line. I got a brain tumor. I'm going to the best brain surgeon.
Right.
So go find those DWI trial attorneys. Like, I publish all my results on my website. Any lawyer that's winning DWI trials is also putting that on his website. And if you don't, do it.
Right.
You know, like any real trial lawyer, you're winning these things, put it on your website.
Right. Right. And listen, I win a lot of trials, but I've only won one DWI trial. I've only had one as a defense lawyer, but I actually recommend and refer people who call me to either go to DWI. I give them 2 or 3 good lawyers' names. Mark is definitely one of them. And then I also tell them to look at people's statistics and find out who actually goes to trial, because that's what you need, because DAs are just very hesitant about dismissing a DWI. Okay?
Well, okay, now look here. Now, I'm sitting in the courtroom, and I see one lawyer, you standing over there. He give me the thumbs up sign. I'm thinking, well, maybe he talked to the DA and he got my case dismissed. So we go out to the, the little weight room outside the courtroom.
Yes.
He said, well, what we can do is we'll give you a year probation and 500 hours community service and something. I can't remember what else he said, but I was so upset with it. I was outside. I was at the courtroom cussing about it, talking loud, so look at everybody looking over there. But
well, who was your lawyer, Tracy?
I can't remember who he was. I got him out the green sheet. I can't remember.
Okay.
He don't even have
Look, okay. All righty, Tracy. Thank you for calling. Thank you for your support.
Then.
All right, bye-bye.
I'll tell you, Vivian, I just had this happen recently. I had a blood test case of a young man that looked fantastic on video. We were going to trials. The second time, the DA didn't have their witnesses ready, and a judge threw it out. She said, no more. You guys got it. I'm putting your feet to the fire. No contingencies. You got to dismiss. You know, either go right now or dismiss it. They dismissed it. I came back probably 3 weeks later, and that file is sitting on the prosecutor's desk in court. I go, what are you doing with that old file? And he goes, oh, I'm getting some heat. I go, who's giving you heat? He goes, because we get federal funding money for no refusal weekends. They keep track of all the blood testing that they do on the weekends, and they look at every case that they get dismissed. And I'm like, nah, that's Big Brother holding the strings. Like, if it needs to be tried, it needs to be tried. If you got a witness, I'd rather be lucky than good any day, you know?
Right. But
he's having to write a memo and cover his rear end, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. You got Matt is spending so much money lobbying and the federal government watching this that it's really hard to, win a case with a breath or a blood test. It's going to raise some red flags.
And that's so unfair, because that might have been relevant 20 years ago, maybe even 10. But to me, now that we have text messaging, I believe that text messaging in driving is more dangerous than drinking and driving. And I think that Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I mean, it's interesting in life how things are cyclical, how things are important and then technology makes them less important. I'm wondering when we'll get to the point where we realize that someone looking down, texting and communicating instead of looking up is way more dangerous than somebody that might have had 2 or 3 drinks but is looking up.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Oprah's making her big spiel on texting and driving.
I mean, because that's the problem. I mean, I watch these kids downtown. You see this when you go to court. I mean, they're texting, they're driving, they're lost. They're on one-way streets. They go from the far left lane to the far right lane because their Google map just told them where to go because they've been looking down instead of up. Yeah. And they swoop over. I've seen accidents caused like that, way more than with DWI. We have another call. Caller, you're on.
Yes, I'm calling. I heard y'all talking about blood testing and blood draws on DWIs or whatever they call that stuff, and the other lawyer, Miss King, Mark Theissen, I guess, he was talking about this new Supreme Court case and people's rights. Here's the bottom line: if you're drunk, you're drunk, and if the lab report says you're over the limit, I don't understand what the question is.
I'll tell you what the question is. Who makes this machine? How reliable is it? There's no part of science, we've learned this since 5th grade, nothing ever says it's science, trust me. No, if your science is good science, let it be attacked, its credibility, its accuracy. And that's my job, is to make sure that they're doing correct science and reliable science that we can rely on. Otherwise, you're going to get like the HPD crime lab with all their DNA testing that flipped over all those cases, or Dee Wallace that was lying on her test down in Brazoria County. It happens every month. I read about somebody that was lying, somebody cheating the system. You got to make, if your machine is reliable and accurate, you're running good science, you should have no problems winning then.
Well, well, I guess what I'm trying to understand is that these labs are accredited. You know, there's these groups and agencies that make sure they're doing that. So if a lab is accredited, then it's good, right?
Let's talk about that. Now, if in Brazoria, that lab was accredited.
Yep.
And so tell me what happened.
In HPD, that lab was accredited. D. Wallace down in
Does
Missouri.
that stop a person? If we're a lab and we're there and I decide, screw it, I'm just going to write something on there and that's the lab result. What stopped? The lab is accredited. They've gone through all the checks and balances. They have the proper machinery. They have the proper tools. Everything's there. But if one person decides to not do their job and be dishonest, who polices the police? Who attacks? Who makes sure? That's why our Constitution was written that way. We can confront our accuser. We can make sure that the machines are accurate so that someone can't go to work and just say, it's this, without doing the actual proper test. What stops a person from doing the right thing when they work at the lab? That's what we're talking about, sir.
Well, I guess, I mean, following all along with that, and I agree, but that's the whole point of the certification is somebody's checking their shoulder, right? And then on top of that, I mean, it's science. You know, I mean, these are people who have extensive background in forensic analysis and stuff like that. Surely I mean, I just feel like if they said it's 0.09 or 0.20, then that must be what it is. And I just don't understand how you can sit there and say that you know more than a lab.
No. I'm not saying that I know more than the lab. Here's my problem with all these laboratories is that it's essentially a fraternity of people. You got Matt Cowan and DPS that's running this whole show, and Matt Cowan trains his people, and then those people go into the various areas and say that their labs are working properly. And it's all in cahoots with the police system. There's so much with it, human error, laziness, or just corruption and greed. There's too much chance for corruption in these machines. That's why for the past 3 years, I've been calling for an independent lab. Why not get Bausch & Lomb or Johnson & Johnson to come in and set up a lab, and that way the police can check what they're doing, defense attorneys can check what they're doing, but when you have a lab that's being managed by the Department of Public Safety, corruption exists and will seep through everything. And if every lab was just accredited and we took it like that, you wouldn't have these different labs screwing up, you know, and being written up.
Let me add one more thing to what Mark said first, caller. Not only is there corruption there, but then they have the incentive when money is attached to it. We have financial resources that us taxpayers pay for that are funded through the government that is attached to it. That also accounts for greed. It accounts for people using the big brother resources to convict the little man and to lie. You know, if someone has to sit there and write a memo where he might be fired or written up for doing something, wouldn't he stretch the truth to keep his job? Wouldn't he not do a check and balance to make sure that the cop is correct, or maybe withhold a document that the defense needed so that he could win? That's where the corruption comes from, and money should not be that closely associated with it.
I mean, I agree. I think that's a good point. I heard that in terms of laboratories, if you take the labs that do like criminal testing and stuff, you know, like you see on TV, those labs could never ever get accreditation by, say, like the FDA when they're regulating drugs and things that people actually consume. That the forensic criminal type of analysis is not even close in quality to the real labs regulated by the FDA. Can either of y'all say anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. I know that ASCLD governs all of our laboratories. I don't know what the certifications are for the FDA, but I was going to say, have you ever worked with a gas chromatograph machine or an infrared spectroscopy? Any of these different machines?
Have I?
Yeah.
No. I think, is that the thing at CBS where you get your photos developed?
Kind of. I mean, yeah, you get a lot of good pictures, you know, 90% of your pictures are good, but then you'll get some crazy picture that's inverse and everything. So when you work on these machines, you can totally see how it's like a computer. You can manually manipulate all the software, and I would have no idea that you did it. And so these people that are doing it, say their reference is out of touch. Instead of calling and saying, hey, boss, I screwed up, they can manipulate these things, and we'd never know about it. And that's what all we're doing, Vivian and I are doing, are making sure the police and the labs are doing their job. If we got good science at the end of the day, everybody's happy.
Final question, then I'll go. Long-time listener, not so often caller, but I'm glad to have your time, and I appreciate it from both of you. If you're drinking and you're driving, does it really all matter?
I would advise don't drink and drive, because I tell my mom, the moment you say, yeah, I've had a couple, they're going to pull you out and do these standard field sobriety tests, and if you don't know what they're looking for, they're easy to fail. And then you go down, and whether you refuse or whether you get a needle, and you know, you're kind of already in the railroad. I advise don't drink and drive. Although you're allowed to, take a taxi. It's way cheaper than calling me.
Well, I appreciate it again. Thanks for your time. I want to tell you both, good luck, Miss King, in that rape trial. There is no bigger advocate than you at that Harris County Criminal Courthouse. And Mr. Theissen, I've seen you in action, and you're one impressive lawyer. Anybody that needs legal advice, I'd have them call either you, Mr. Theissen, or Miss King, because y'all are at the top of my list. I tell you that. So God bless you both, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. We fight. We try to fight the good fight, and I'm getting worn out too. Let's talk about another area of the law in DWI, and that's Ambien. Sometimes, you know, a person, I've heard of this situation. A person took, you know, it takes Ambien because they have sleep problems, but then in the middle of the night, he's taking his Ambien, but a buddy gets stranded, so he has to run out and go pick him up. And then he gets pulled over because he's not quite, you know, as coherent as he needs to be, but he is, and he tells the police officer that he's been on Ambien. Tell me about that. Have you ever dealt with the Ambien case?
Let's start with the law, what Texas defines. They say that you can be intoxicated, which is not having the normal use of your mental faculties, like my mind, I don't know what road I'm on, or I take a wrong way because I'm intoxicated, right? Due to alcohol or drug, prescription, illegal, or not having the normal use of your physical faculties, right? That you can't walk straight or that kind of stuff, or then a .08. So with drugs, you don't have a .08, right? You'd have Ambien, I've lost mental and I've lost physical faculties. Even if you're prescribed to take it, and you decide to drive, it's still illegal. And there's a bigger thing with Ambien where they say, well, I didn't even know. Like, it's not like, oh, I took my Ambien and then I decided to drive. There's called somnambulism as a defense to murder. Somnambulism is it's not a defense to DWI. Sleepwalking, right? Because there is no, I've only had one judge that actually ever said that, you know, like I was on GHB, I didn't know what I was doing, give you an involuntary intoxication. There is no involuntary intoxication. I didn't mean to get intoxicated. That would open up too much. That'd open up Pandora's box full of defenses, you know. Oh, I didn't know they made this margarita at Liberty Tortilla with Everclear or something, you know, and I didn't know I was going to, it'd open up a Pandora's box. But with Ambien, yes, you can be intoxicated on your prescription medication and drive. You're legally intoxicated. They even try and go after Adderall, which I'm like, Adderall, it makes you think better. It's not affecting you at all, you know, like you're thinking better. It's like speed and cocaine for your brain. You're actually going to be more alert. But hydrocodone, Xanax, all those people with their prescription medication, they go, well, I was allowed to take it. Well, the law is very clear. If it affects your mental or physical faculties, then you're technically intoxicated.
Wow. Have you ever had to try any of these cases with like Ambien or Adderall?
Yeah, I've dealt with them. And
what are jury's attitudes about Ambien, let's say, first?
I haven't done, well, did I do an Ambien?
Or what have your...
I did an Adderall 2 weeks ago, and Klonopin.
What's that?
Klonopin's a sleep anti-anxiety medication, and they were saying, well, have you taken this before? And she goes, yeah, last night. It wasn't until this night, and they're trying to say, oh, it's still in her system, and that's why she, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. You have to have what's called a drug recognition expert, right? It's not, you have police officers, then you have them that are certified in their standard field sobriety test, then you have them that are certified to operate breath testing machines, then you have ones that are drug recognition experts, and they got to go through this 14-step process and analyze your client on whether this drug is affecting them and what category or classification the drug is. It's all mumbo jumbo, you know? And most of the people are like, I'm on Klonopin, and they go, I think that you were under the influence of Klonopin. That is, you know, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And so you got to cross them on that, but at least you have to know the dosage, the half-life of it, when you took it last, stuff like that, you know? If people they find weed in your car, you know, without you admitting that you smoked the weed or finding a joint or something, you're going to confuse the issues. He wasn't intoxicated on weed. He just had possession of weed, you know? So there's some good case law out there on that.
Okay, good. Let's take another call. Caller, you're on. Thank you for calling.
Good show. Hello. I've been in the hospital before where the nurse stuck me at least 5 times searching for a vein. How many times can they stick you before they, you know, should leave you alone?
That's an interesting legal argument that it says under the warrant you're allowed to to kick down the door once. I'm allowed to kick down the door of your vein once. And so that's an interesting legal argument that that warrant allowed you for the first pinprick. But do you get to the second and third? It's going to take the right judge with the right attorney to grant that, but there is nothing in the law that says they can't prick you 5 different times, you know?
Wow.
Can you do anything to keep them off you, like tell them you're on blood thinners, whether it's true or not?
There's a case, and you're catching me up, it's either Johnston or Hereford, where they either beat up this guy and took, or they didn't actually ask him about his prior medical history, and that was found to be unreasonable under the 4th Amendment. So they should be asking you that kind of stuff, because what if you're anemic and you can't clot, you know?
Right.
And you're going to bleed out after they stick you 5 times. So there's, I forgot if it's the Johnston or the Hereford case, but there's a case law that goes directly on point. You're supposed to ask somebody's medical past, and you're supposed to take it through reasonable means. You can't have 8 dudes beat the crap out of you and take your blood.
Right. I would think if you have veins that collapse or that are hard to prick, that you should tell them that this is not a good idea. I mean, you should explain that to them and make sure it's clear, and make sure that that's documented.
Were they testing you for your blood in the hospital for DWI?
Well, I imagine I was in a lot of pain, and maybe my veins just kind of drew up or whatever, or maybe the nurse was just a baby nurse in triage or whatever, like they do at Ben Taub. Didn't have that much experience. You know, I think it was because I was in trauma and my veins were just plain hard to get or whatever.
That's a whole nother issue. It's called hospital enzymatic assay blood draws. I have a paper that I wrote, and it's been published, and it's on my website. That is junk science. What the hospitals are actually testing for is what kind of stuff you have, like just a boiler range of ethanol in your system before they start going to give you morphine and whatever, hydrocodone and everything to sedate you. It's going to react with all that alcohol, so they just test you real quick. The bottom of all those hospital records say, not forensically acceptable. So if you have a hospital blood test that wasn't, I mean, they can take the blood at the hospital and then send it off to a lab in Austin or something, or Houston, and test it, but the blood that's being tested by the hospital will admit, this is not forensically acceptable blood. This is just kind of a shot in the dark, what we need to know so we don't kill you with our medicine that we're about to put in you.
And it's interesting that you said that, Mark, because in the old days, before the blood draws and warrants, if someone went to the hospital for an accident, they would use that blood, even though it wasn't for the purpose of the blood test, supposedly. It wasn't supposed to be for that. Because a lot of times, as a matter of course, you know, they would just see whatever's in your system on the toxicology report.
Right.
If you've had an accident, and then whatever it is, they'll just tell you the range.
I'll tell you, that third collar just goes to show our point. Back in the old day, they used to just get away with all that. It wasn't until defense attorneys started studying science and going to laboratories and reading about this and saying, wait, this can be affected by other stuff, you know? Right. And now we've kept the science, and now we're protecting people's freedoms, and you're not pleading guilty to these crazy blood tests or drugs that really had no effect in the metabolites of the drugs or something. So it's defense attorneys that are out there protecting the citizens.
Because otherwise we'd be locked up for everything, because it just doesn't seem off the cuff that Adderall would be a drug that would make you lose the normal use of your physical faculties. I thought it was to enhance the normal use of your physical faculties. Caller, do you have any other questions?
Oh, yeah, this is a real interesting subject. I could think of a few, like have they ever calibrated these testing machines with the effects of, say, 1 or 2 O'Doul's, non-alcoholic beer?
Well, you know, even though O'Doul's is non-alcoholic, it actually still has ethanol in it.
Really?
Yeah, and so I own a breath testing machine. I've been to different seminars, like your office mate, Troy McKinney, has a breath testing, and he gets the simulator solution. I mean, things that'll set it off, sourdough bread, raisin bread, because it takes all that yeast, and the machine is thinking that that acetaldehyde in that yeast is actually alcohol, and it affects it. I mean, soy sauce will set it off, mouthwash will set it off, you know, if you burp. Like, say you had, you know, shoot, a lot of things will set it off if you burp, you know. Tortillas, you just had them with fajitas, so the breath machine is really messed up. But yeah, the ethanol in O'Doul's can be tested, I guess, via anything, because you'll see the ethanol, but it should be a light or a very low level, because I think it's only 1% or something.
Okay. Very low level of alcohol in it. It has just a bit, I guess, to make it where they can put the word beer on the bottle.
Well, there's one lawyer in town that actually recommends when you go to a bar, go buy you and your buddy an O'Doul's with cash and keep a receipt for that night. And then throw all your other receipts out, right? So when you get pulled over and they go, I smelled an odor of alcoholic beverage, and you go, I got my receipt, we were just having O'Doul's, but that gets into trickery and
yeah, and deception, and they did have an O'Doul's, but maybe they're leaving out everything else that they had.
Yeah.
All righty.
One more question.
Okay, certainly.
But and I'll hang up. What about hydrocodone? Thank you. Good show.
Hydrocodone won't show up on a breath machine because the breath is only looking for alcohol. Hydrocodone won't show up in a gas chromatograph unless they're specifically looking for gas chromatogram, but unless they're specifically looking for that. It'll show up in your urine, but again, urine's the trash can of the body. Your body's already processed it, but you can certainly be intoxicated on your hydrocodone. A lot of those police officers, and you say, look, I was just taking it because I hurt my leg. I was taking it in my normal prescribed doses, and my doctor never told me that I wasn't able to drive. Well, the DAs don't care. The police officers don't care. You're going to have to bring down your surgeon or your doctor and come testify. That's him normally. That's not him on hydrocodone, but the problem is you're the only one that testifies I was taken in accordance with my dosage, because we all know if I wanted to go take 3 hydrocodones right now, I'd be on the couch and certainly shouldn't be driving.
That's true. That's true. And the intent issue becomes a big issue with that. Is if you're taking it like it's prescribed. Like you said, you could be taking overdoses or too much of it, or getting high off of it, or getting hooked on it. Let's see what else. What other questions do I have? What else? What other things?
I think a good one to talk about is these standard field sobriety tests, right? Because that's back in the old day. We didn't have breath testing or we didn't have blood testing. How were they getting arrested? Like your caller, Tracy, right? They said, I didn't take a breath test, but they still pulled me over. There are 3 standard field sobriety tests, right? They do the eye thing. It's called the horizontal gaze nystagmus. And they show your eye is supposed to be jerking, right? Millimeters of a jerk if you have alcohol, and you're supposed to see 6 different clues. The problem with this test is that we can't see his eyes. And what do you think the officer is going to say? They always say you failed, you know? We got to trust the officer, and he goes, yep, I saw all 6. And I'm like, dude, you're looking for millimeters of jerking at night while you're hopped up. You don't know who this guy is or if he has a gun. No, they always say you fail. So, but that test doesn't measure mental and physical, so then we look at the walk and turn of the one-leg
stand. And let me just tell you something about the horizontal gaze nystagmus. When I was a prosecutor, they did a test on us, and they all let us get drunk at lunchtime. Different levels of drunk. Like one person had 1 drink, one had 3, one had 5. I mean, different levels. And we took a class, and we did it to each other. I could never see. Alcohol is supposed to depress your eyes enough to where you can actually see the little jerking. Your eyes jerk so fast that the human eye doesn't see it, right? Isn't that the way
we all
it's
have
explained?
natural nystagmus, but you can't see it unless there's a central nervous system depressant like CNS depressants, alcohol, or PCP.
Right. So I never could see it, and so I don't believe the police officers because of that.
Oh no, but they always say you do, you know.
Right.
And so then you look at, all right, what's the next test? Because they ain't going to let you go after that, and they certainly don't arrest you. They say, all right, I want you to walk a line, right? Man, they make you walk heel to toe. You have to stand first, right foot in front of left foot. Nobody ever stands there. I mean, these aren't normal exercises, right? Then you got to walk 9 heel to toe. And then when you get to the turn, and you always have to keep your arms at your side. If you raise your arms more than 6 inches, that's a clue of intoxication. And then at the turn, you have to go to the left, not the right, which they don't tell you. You have to go to the left, and you can't pivot, otherwise there's another clue. You got to do a series of small steps, and then come back 9 heel to toe. And if you miss heel to toe by just ½ an inch, that's a clue. So there are 8 possible clues on that test. It only takes 2 to indicate intoxication. And my whole thing to the jury, I go, look, these are abnormal tests. How are you going to judge if somebody lost their normal physical and mental faculties when you're giving us these crazy tests that are abnormal? Of course we're not going to be able to do this.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree, and I don't think I would ever take them. Is there a caller on?
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Yes, there is.
Yes, sir. What's your question?
Ms. King, first let me congratulate you on your show. You're a fine judge, lawyer, and
Are you trying to tease me?
My question is this. Let's go past the case and get to punishment phase. There are lawyers who are not explaining, if, say, for instance, you sentenced to 30 days, how are they calculating time served on the DWI cases?
You know that kind of stuff.
And I'll hang up and listen.
Right, right. Well, for years, it's always been 2 for 1, but I even understand that, I understand that it's 2 for 1 in the Harris County Jail. Now, understand there's a difference between sentencing and the execution of the sentence. The judge or the DA or you agree to 30 days. The jailers can execute that sentence any way they want. And right now it's 2 to 1. It's been that way for years, but there's actually certain programs in the jail where it's 3 to 1.
Like on a first DWI, it's up to 180 days in jail, and the second one's up to a year. And then we're talking about jail because prison you get into parole and everything, but just say on a first or a second DWI, you get jail. Say I get 30-day sentence, right? You take that 30 days and you divide it by 2 is 15. And then when you got arrested, you probably spent one night in jail. You went from a Friday into a Saturday. They're going to give you credit for 2 days. So we went 30 to 15, and now you get credit for the 2 you already served, so you're going to do 13 days in jail. But if you have a fine or court cost or something that weren't paid before you go in there, they give you at 100. So say you got like a $700 fine and you didn't pay it before you went into jail, you just went from 13 days to every day is another $100. You got to work off that other $700. You got another 7 days, you're at 20 days in jail. So
Right.
get your fines and court costs paid before you go to jail.
I know. And what's the advantage of, since DWIs you can't get deferred adjudication for, like other crimes, so that means you have no possibility for non-disclosure, what's the advantage of taking probation on a first DWI, which is a misdemeanor, over taking jail time? Because they might just give you 7 days in jail. So.
All right, so probation, you don't lose your license, right? Because you're going to need that license to go jump through all those hoops. If you just get the jail time, or sometimes you can get a time served and a fine where you just pay a fine and walk away, but you're going to lose your license for 1 year. You're entitled to an occupational driver's license, but that's through the court that convicted you. So your lawyer has to know, hey, this is Judge so-and-so, he's going to require a scram bracelet. Or this is Judge so-and-so, he doesn't care, you know. So then you're like, well, I don't want that scram bracelet, or screw it, you know. And then I have clients that are like, man, I'm not doing the scram. I'm just going to drive for a year without a license.
Oh,
I'm like,
Lord.
I cannot advise you to do that, you know. But a lot of people would just say, look, I'm just going to pay the fine, walk away, and then drive without a license. But when you do that, you're risking criminal, civil liability, all kinds of stuff.
And you know you can get caught because you just got caught driving while intoxicated. So that's not a good idea. But for our poor clients, they do that. Let's take another call. Caller, you're on. Thank you for calling. You still? Hello? You still there? You're going to have to turn your volume down on the TV and talk directly into the receiver.
I got that Justin Bieber, please believe it.
All right.
Okay? I don't think you really want to talk to us and ask us a DWI question. Okay, well, we have about...
That man should not be drinking or
Yes,
driving.
Don't
He might be
drive
drinking.
tonight,
Yeah.
sir. You just called
Or
us.
if you
Don't
do drive, I hope you have a lot of money, call me. I'm just saying. Just saying.
You know he's playing, but you know you can't find his name on the website. But you should not be drinking and driving. You know that. If so, you need to know the law. It's very expensive. Now I see commercials and signs and billboards that say DWI. I think they're even putting costs down there now, like $10,000 or. They're going to cost you at least $5,000, where they actually try to tell you how much it's going to cost. Have you ever seen those commercials? Tell me what you think
just
about
blew $17,000. I was actually at an ALR hearing this morning talking with...
Tell them what ALR is.
ALR, so implied consent, like, all right, let me start over. When you go down to the DMV and you say, I want to drive, they say, we think you're responsible, we're going to allow you the privilege of driving, sign right here. When you sign your ID, there's this language in the statute that says if you're ever pulled over, you got to give a sample of your breath. So when you refuse, they say, well, you just violated our contract. We're going to take away your license for 6 months. Or if you take it and you fail, it's only 90 days. And you get to say, hey, DPS, I'm still an American citizen. Before you deprive me of any right or privileges, like the privilege of driving, I'm entitled to my day in court. I want to have a hearing. So this is ALR as a civil driver's license hearing. It's kind of, I mean, it's great because we get to go down there and get a free bite at the apple and talk to the police officers and figure out what they're going to say. But I was talking to an officer down there and he goes, Theissen, I got you a bunch of clients and what's that? We just blew $17,000. I go, man, I wish I could get out there and start charging $17,000. I know there are a lot of attorneys that already do charge $17,000, but I think that's adding in, because if you get convicted of a DWI, you have surcharges from at least $1,000 a year to $2,000 a year every year for 3 years. So that could be $6,000 in fines. Your insurance is going to go up. You're probably going to spend another $1,000 in probation. So that's $7,000, maybe $10,000. Then a good DWI attorney is going to cost anywhere between, I'll say anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, you know, and
right.
it goes exponentially up, you know, as the seriousness of the case goes up.
I just find that interesting that law enforcement is saying how much it's going to cost, and I know they're factoring in the cost of a lawyer. So I find that very interesting.
Well, when they said that, I'm like, thanks, guys. Now I can start charging $17,000. And people were like, hey, do you take payment plans? Because this is going to cost me $17,000. And I'm like, I was going to tell you, but for you, sir, I'll give you a discount. It'll only be $15,000. But I'm not going to do that. I'll be real.
I know. It's funny. I just thought it was interesting that I started seeing signs like that telling us what to do. So tell me what the trends are. You know, like there was a time where many of the DWIs were on Richmond and Westheimer, you know, around Sam's Boat, the nightclubs late at night.
Oh, now you're
what
dating
trends
yourself. You're probably going to Peter's Wildlife back in the day on Blue Planet, Vivian. Maybe a little Yucatan liquor stand on Richmond.
I know.
I mean, they're still coming. I still get some on Richmond coming from Legends or other establishments on Richmond or centerfolds or stuff. But the hot spots that I'm getting are Washington Avenue. You got to be crazy to drive on Washington Avenue. That is, you'll see DWI officers running laser, being like, I got you. 35 and a 30, why don't you pull on over?
Oh my
Man,
God.
I smell alcohol. And they just start, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And then Midtown, I mean, it's close enough to walk. And we're getting a lot more in the Heights, too.
Wow.
I mean, your new big, hot areas of bars, and you get them down. Kemah is ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. When you go down to Kemah, the police officer waiting at the end of the cul-de-sac for you to leave those bars because nobody lives around there, and you all got to drive out, so the police officers are just catching you in Galveston, Harris County. It's ridiculous. So
Wow.
I would say, and my wife even says, she's like, why do we have to take a taxi to dinner? And I'm like, they do in New York. Just take a taxi. I mean, it's bad for my business, but it's safe for my child and my wife, and it's safe for Vivian and her family.
Yes,
so.
yes. In fact, I went to another lawyer's wedding this weekend, and another lawyer came and picked me up. She said, Vivian, I hired a driver for the night, so can I come pick you up? I'm like, I'm so happy, you know, so we can just have a good time. We don't have to worry about it, because I try not to drink more than 1.5 and drive.
I tell you, I handle some intox assaults, intox manslaughter, and those are just nightmares. And I think the worst thing that can ever happen to you, the worst nightmare, is you survive the accident. You
the person who caused it?
Yeah, or you're just involved in the, yeah, you caused it. I mean, because if you didn't cause it, you're not going to be charged. But you caused an accident where you took another life. I mean, your life takes a hard right, you know? Whether you're going to get 10 years probation, you're going to be a convicted felon, you're going to never forget about those people. And I'm like, it's the biggest nightmare, you know? And you go down and you talk to these juries about, look, this affects his family, their family, my family. I haven't slept in 6 months, you know? And it's just, it's probably the worst thing that can happen. And we all know it happens to these high school kids. If any of you high school kids are watching this, don't drink and drive at all. Every year, a group of them gets in a wreck, you know?
In a wreck, or goes to sleep, or something bad happens because of alcohol. Something bad happens. I know. My daughter's gone to the prom the last 2 years, and I hired limos. I mean, even when it wasn't her prom. It's just, I just wanted all the kids to be safe.
You know what you were saying about drugs affecting your text messaging, and you just said tired, falling asleep. The National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration actually came out with a study where drowsy driving, you know, that you're tired, mimics intoxication. I remember we'd be driving up to Colorado, all the kids in the Suburban, and my dad would be nodding off,
Right.
I'll make it, slapping himself, rolling down that ice cold air coming in, and I'm like, you know, we're weaving all the way. It's just as dangerous, you know, so.
You're right.
But that's honestly a defense that I use, that he wasn't intoxicated, he's just exhausted. And I have certain clients that work all night. Or I had a psychology professor studying for his boards. He was just exhausted and absolutely looked intoxicated, but he wasn't, you know. He was dumb for driving, but he was.
Had he had a drink at all?
He did, because he was trying to do too many things at once. He went and studied all night, and then he wanted to say hi to his friends at the bar at midnight, so the library closes at midnight. We brought in records of that. He was only there till 1. I mean, how much can you I guess you could drink a lot in an hour.
Yeah,
but
well, really just usually
he had a
beer,
couple
maybe
beers,
2.
you know, trying to do everything, balance his work, his study, his friendships, his relationships, and then he leaves, and he's so damn tired, but he also has the smell of alcohol on him that he didn't stand a chance.
Let's talk about that. We have 3 minutes. I want you to talk about the smell of alcohol and then just wrap it up for us. Do you really think police officers can smell 2 beers? or 3 beers?
I think so. Well,
I think because at the end of the day, your breath can be kind of dirty and nasty, you know, and I think maybe it holds on to it a little bit better. What do you think about that?
it wouldn't have happened to me. I was sitting in court 13 today waiting for them to close up, and I'm sitting next to this lady, and I'm just like, oh my God, she smells so bad like alcohol, right? I mean, you can smell it. I don't know if she was an alcohol. She didn't look very, she had a rosy complexion. She looked like an alcoholic, but you can smell that sweetness. But on beer, you don't smell alcohol because alcohol is odorless. You smell the beverage that the alcohol is contained in. You smell the barley and hops of beer.
Okay.
You smell the wood of the whiskey, or you smell, what she smelled like was the fruit of the rum. You know, I could smell that kind of stuff, or that acetaldehyde coming out. And like if you go to the gym the next day and you're sweating out, you're like, dang, I smell, you know? So you can definitely smell it, but you can't actually smell alcohol. You smell the liquid or the drink that the alcohol's in.
I always just find it interesting that all police reports say strong odor of alcohol.
They always say that.
Red, glassy eyes. I mean, that's the thing that gets strange in our business. When you look at all these DWI reports, you look at all of these traffic stops for possession of marijuana, when the officers generally, according to our clients, stop you for traffic, search the car first, find the weed, and then all of a sudden it smells like a weed, because you just often, I've been around a lot of kids and young people, you don't often smell weed in a car, but I have smelled it on people. I mean, I have to admit, I have smelled it on people.
They always say you smell that weed, and they always say you smell like alcohol with red glassy eyes.
Strong odor of an alcoholic beverage about your person.
Yeah.
Always strong. So I always found that to be very interesting. When is it not strong? I had an officer tell me once, he's now deceased, that on the probable cause for when they say possession of marijuana, it's a drop-down menu. You
know, these DWI case reports, it's just fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank.
They're just HGN, always 6. I never need to change that. And then I'll get them because it says contacts, none. I'm like, he just told you on video I had contact. Oh, I made that mistake. What you're telling me is I forgot to click off that box on my form, you know?
I know, yeah. I know, and that's what's sad about it. Viewers, if you're watching, is that we see these reports so much and they all say the same thing. Everybody doesn't act the same way. And that's the thing that's disturbing. So I think what we've learned is if you're in a place like Kemah, or you're in the Washington area, the Heights, you're partying a little bit too much, take a cab, have a designated driver. If not, obviously you know this is a public service show. You can hire any lawyer you want. You know us. You can always Google us. And we're not doing that. We're doing this for the community, and we hope you learn. We want our community to be safe, but we also want you to understand the education of it. We want you to be able to talk to your legislators about the laws if you think they're overbearing. And one of the things I do think is overbearing are the DWI laws. But let me let you wrap it up.
I would just tell you, you know, it's cheaper to take a cab, but if you are going to drive, be smart about it. Don't take those standard field sobriety tests. Tell them, look, I want to talk to a lawyer. And if they say, do you want to take a breath test? Honestly, right now, if they're going to be getting blood, I can beat breath a lot easier. And then when you get out, hire a DWI trial attorney. How do you know? Go to his website. Look at it's public records. See the trials that he's won. Go hire a good DWI trial attorney.
I agree, and with that, we're going to wrap up, and thank you for watching, thank you for calling, and please watch next week when we have another interesting topic on Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Good night. Yay! Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with a crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Tonight we have something really good, hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with a crime. This is a show where I try to educate